Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road. It's the first touch, strong connection. It lays deep in your soul. Feel the kindness strongly coming. 'Cause you can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.
Hi, it's Nancy Earl, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And we're going to have a really fun and interesting show today. Paul Kiritsis, okay, I have to pronounce your name right, so let me do this. Kiritsis? Kiritsis?
Kiritsis.
Kiritsis?
Yes.
I did it. Paul
Yeah.
Kiritsis is here, and we're going to talk about alchemy. And this is something that I've never talked about. I've done I don't know, 400 and some shows now, but I've never had anybody who talked about alchemy, and it really interests me. And I think it'll interest you guys too. Before we get into it, I just want to say we just had 222 on the calendar. And I just want to say how amazing it was, all the people who are recognizing the numbers, who are recognizing the angel numbers. And what it tells me is that we are raising our consciousness. Because I think the numbers have always been here, the feathers, the birds, all the signs that the angels bring us, but we didn't recognize them. Now, what I've realized is more and more people, what do you think, Paul, are seeing the signs?
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
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 So if
Yeah.
you want to read more about him, you know what? I talked about him in my first book, Wake Up, the Universe is Speaking to You, but I do address him again in my new angel book. It's a guide to angel communication and spiritual law. And this is, Collective Ink put this together. I think it's the same publisher as Paul, and they did a wonderful job. And you can read about the signs. So I just want to mention that today before we get into it. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Paul. He is a licensed medical psychologist. He's living and working. Are you still in San Francisco area?
Yeah, I still live there. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And he's been trained under the scientist practitioner model. However, he also espouses modern esoteric spirituality and has very strong esoteric learning. So he is profoundly concerned with how ostensibly antithetical disciplines like Orthodox science and modern esoteric spirituality might reconcile. And that's true. I just want to say that I feel that it is coming together. He holds postgraduate qualifications in 4 different disciplines. He's got a fabulous background. I guess I just want to know, Paul, how did
Mhm.
you decide you wanted to get into alchemy? Tell us your story. You say that you became deeply fascinated with the esoteric discipline in your mid-20s.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting question. So it started at around maybe
Okay.
2005.
Okay.
And that's when I decided to return to university and I had been on a protracted break from formal studies and I decided to study English and professional writing. And during that time, I became acquainted with alchemy. I studied a specific subject called Jung's cultural psychology,
Hmm.
and that was taught by Professor David Tacey at La Trobe University. I'm obviously from Australia, so I did my
Right.
undergraduate studies in Australia.
Okay.
And during that time, I became familiar with Carl Jung. And Carl Jung dealt with alchemical studies in the latter half of his career. So that's how I initially got into the field. I started to learn about this discipline called alchemy, and it really intrigued me. It was a very ambiguous field and very deep, and it kind of combined so many different elements and things like astrology is part of alchemy. Then a lot of people relate it to pseudoscience. A lot of people will relate it to spirituality. Theories of transformation and transmutation and things like that. And all of that kind of really fascinated me. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a discipline that I can kind of see myself in and something that I can immerse myself in and study and learn more about. So that's kind of how I suppose that was my first contact with alchemy. It was through Carl Jung. So from a psychological perspective.
Yeah. So when did the spiritual part come in?
Well, I've had some specific experiences in my life that might be deemed spiritual.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Tell us, do tell.
okay. So, like a while ago, so I've always liked esotericism and studied esotericism and these fields, and I'm interested in metaphysics, and I'm interested in the supernatural as well. I'm interested in things like telekinesis, mind-to-mind communication, so telepathy, clairvoyance, that kind of stuff, reincarnation. Anyway, so a long time ago, many, many moons ago, I came into contact with a girl who contacted me through my website, and she basically knew that I was into esoteric studies, and she contacted me for a specific reason. She said that she had an issue or a problem, and her issue and problem was that this guy came to her in her dreams very regularly, and he seemed to serve a premonitory function, like he would always come to her when something bad was going to happen or to warn her about something.
Oh, wow.
And anyway, so to cut a long story short, we started to engage. I started to tell her things about, like what I was doing and what I was interested in. Anyway, so he basically, this entity who was appearing to her in her dreams, started to appear again and then started to tell her things about me that she couldn't have possibly have known. And we're talking about, some very, very personal things that aren't written down anywhere. They're not transcribed anywhere. And that started to alarm me. I'm like, how does she know all of this stuff? How does she know all of this stuff about me?
Right.
So, it kind of reeled me in a little bit, and I became fascinated and so deeply ensconced in her world and in what was happening to her. And she basically was seeking help in how to deal with her problem, right? So the fact that there was this entity that was appearing to her in her dreams that would tell her things about other people, and then when she would confront them or ask them about these things that had been disclosed in her dreamscape, these individuals be like, yeah, that's true, how do you know that?
Well,
So I think that, go ahead.
no, I got to stop you because my angel stands right next to me.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she does.
Mm.
So if you would, she doesn't come to me in a dream. We all have a guardian angel. I'm just thinking, as you're telling me this,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what my angel does. Like if you
Yeah.
would ask me, if you would say, hey, Nance, what do you think about this? I would ask my angel and I would ask the divine source, of course, God, spirit. But she is right on the money. And I
Yeah.
wonder if that was an angelic being or if it was a guide. You know what I
Um,
mean?
so through our conversations, what I discovered was the fact that I got the impression that he was once alive. Okay, so what she told me about him was that,
Uh-huh.
he would tell her specific aspects of his life, the life that he had lived,
Ah.
and the fact that when he passed away, he said that he came into contact with her and he saw how beautiful her soul was. I can't remember the exact description that
Oh,
she used.
wow.
Yeah, and he attached himself to her, and
Oh,
he's been going to her intermittently, since she was 8. This is what she tells me. Um, so I found that it was completely compelling to me. And I was enthralled because I was like, how does she know all this stuff about me? I think at one stage, she started telling me things like, oh, he told me what you've got underneath your bed. And I'm
oh
like,
my gosh.
yeah, 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 yeah,
That's
yeah. And
intrusive. Now
it
that's like a little bit intrusive. And I just want
yeah,
to stop you one real quick and say something. It's not
yeah,
really cool that he attached himself to her energy.
right,
You
right.
know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
crazy in itself.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was interesting. And then when I went to Greece, because she's from Greece, she was from Piraeus, from Athens, and we
Yeah.
met up in person and we had a discussion about it. And
Yeah.
she seemed to serve as the vehicle for this, you
Right.
know, force to come through, or this energy to come through,
Okay.
because it seemed to me that I needed to receive this information at that point in time, and she
Okay.
was just the vehicle for that. So she was
Okay.
yeah, so she basically told me, she goes, what was that, Paul? She goes, what was that all about? She goes, that story that he described. And I'm sitting there thinking,
Ah,
oh, I'm like, I know what that was. I know exactly what he was talking about, but you don't know what that was because it's not personal to
it's
you,
not for
right?
you.
Yeah,
Right. Oh,
exactly.
so
That
he
info.
was a messenger. He was
Yeah,
absolutely a
yeah,
messenger. I
yeah.
love
And
that.
it was very compelling. It was a very compelling experience. It's one that stands out as kind of like a peak experience in my life. And I
Sure.
always, talk a little bit about it and describe it. And it left a huge impression. It left an indelible mark on me, and has definitely influenced me from that point onwards. That was like in 2012 or 13, somewhere 12 or 13,
Yeah.
somewhere there.
I pick
Yeah,
up
yeah.
like I can feel like it made a believer out of you.
Yes, absolutely. Because I had studied these topics
Yeah.
from an intellectual perspective for a while, and then I came, in contact
Ah,
with her, and I'm like, oh, there is something more to it. It's almost as if the universe kind of lifted the drapes a little bit and said, okay, this is what's out there.
mm, there you go.
Immerse yourself. Yeah, there you go. And then the curtains came down because we eventually lost contact. Um,
Oh gosh. Well, then
yeah,
you got what you were supposed to get, the message. Well, I just want to understand a little bit about alchemy and alchemists, and this, I'm a novice, so I don't know so much about it. And you're the expert. You've written the
yeah,
book. But
yeah.
I want to understand something because the only thing I really have heard so much about an alchemist is that they can, create anything, but we're all
Mm,
little creators.
mm,
So, I read in the book you talk about a lot of history. You say
yeah.
alchemists can fashion gemstones, metals, elixirs, and other products by first reducing them to a primal, um, or a prima materia. It's
Yes.
Yeah, talk about this. I want to understand this, and I want the audience to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when people think about alchemy in contemporary times, they kind of think about someone like creating what they call the Philosopher's Stone, right? And everyone's heard of
Right.
the Philosopher's Stone because of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Um, so there's kind of like strong associations with that. There's strong associations with Jung, with Paracelsus van Hockenheim, of course, who is the father of iatrochemistry. And then, a lot of people will associate it with, pseudoscience, mysticism, chemistry, right? Because it was the first form of chemistry, astrology, things like that. So esoteric ideas and thoughts, and
Mhm.
psychology as well, because it belongs to the field of psychology. So if you look at the etymology of the word, where the word actually comes from, it comes from like the Greek word chimia, which is to smelt, right? And it also
To
and
smelt?
to smelt, like to
Okay.
smelt, like
Right, right. I understand. Well,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. And also from the Egyptian Kemet, which is the black earth, from whence everything sprang forth, right? So Kemet means black earth, and it kind of alludes to the black silt of the River Nile. Like the process of birth, death, and regeneration and transformation. And if you think about it as a word, alchemy, it's kind of like, if we were to loosely define it, would be the art and science of transformation. But if you were to define it more explicitly, one would call it kind of like a physical or a chemical operative process, but then concurrently also a psychological and spiritual process, which has its birth in Alexandria in Egypt, sometime between 300 and 200 BCE, right? And it's kind of like a pastiche, kind of like of many, many different ideas, philosophical ideas and spiritual ideas interwoven into one. And it's all pertains to the theory of transmutation,
Well,
the idea that we can transmute or change one thing to something else.
so it's a practice
Yeah.
and we're all little creators, so we all have the ability.
Yes.
We
Yes,
just have
absolutely.
to, yeah, we just have to have the formula.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, yes, that's pretty
Okay.
much you got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people will say, like our main idea in alchemy is the idea of transmuting base metals like lead and mercury into
Into
gold.
gold.
Yeah,
Right.
right. So that's the like
Yeah,
when we
you've
think
heard
of most,
that.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, everyone knows that, right? So when you hear of alchemy, you think of metallic transmutation, and
Mhm.
that's the we always think about it from that perspective, like from the idea of changing one metal to the next. And a
Right.
lot of people will ask me, they're like, "Oh, so how is that possible?" Like according to the contemporary, nomothetic sciences and more materialistic frames of reference, that shouldn't be possible.
Mhm.
So what I've said about this is, while kind of like the idea of transforming like one metal, like I suppose copper, into another metal like gold, kind of like violates, I guess, the nomothetic laws, right,
Mhm.
as outlined by physical sciences like physics and chemistry. It may be possible because what we always think about is the idea. So, to for a successful transmutation to occur, you need to basically inject some kind of psychic mental energy into the
Yes.
matter or into the chemic, right, into the
Yes.
element or
The
whatever you're working.
intention. It's the
Intention.
intention,
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
it? Okay.
And it's basically coming from a perspective of mental energy over physical energy. Like the mental is more powerful than the physical.
Mhm.
Matter comes from mind. So therefore, if I inject some kind of focused idea or creative thought into the alembic or into what the process that I'm trying to change, it'll have some kind of effect on the material, on the chemistry, and it'll initiate a change on some kind of molecular level. So that's the whole idea that runs behind alchemy, I suppose, and the Philosopher's Stone, which is, creating, base, gold from base metals like, lead and mercury.
Right, right. Well, okay, so I'm kind of like a bottom line kind of girl here.
Yeah.
So it's manifesting
Yes.
because our words and our thoughts and our feelings are stronger, and we can manifest anything because we all have the spark of the divine. So it's
Yes.
believing, knowing, with absolute no doubt whatsoever that you can manifest this, and we can because we have that ability, but we just don't realize we have it. Is that
That's
right?
exactly, yeah, that's exactly right. Like, we're kind of divine entities and beings, and we're little
Yeah,
demiurges ourselves, like little creators in our own right. And
yeah,
a lot of people think about God as being something that's outside of themselves, whereas God is actually within us, right?
right,
So we
right.
ourselves are creators and divine in that right.
Mhm,
And a lot of most forms of alchemy subscribe to that animistic worldview, like the idea of everything being animate and alive. So there's kind of like, the universal life, and all of the other forms of life are kind of manifestations or kind of permutations of that one life.
mhm,
So there's kind of latent powers, I suppose, in an individual soul force, because all souls are kind of fragments of that universal life force, right?
yeah.
So that kind of it kind of makes sense from that perspective, in that we can tap into some of those energies that are required for things like, non-physical processes like clairvoyance and telepathy and
Mhm.
whatnot, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We're
yeah,
these
so
energetic beings connected. That's what I teach about too in my book, and we're on the same page. Like I bring in the light, I bet you do too. You bring in that energy because we're plugging in. We're these energetic souls. We're the energetic beings. And what I feel like, Paul, is as the more we tap in, the more
Mhm.
information we get, and the higher we raise our vibration. And then that's how we're going to get to where we need to get. And that's how we're learning to create. I love this because I just want to say this and I want to get your opinion on this. So I feel like the longer I do it, the more belief I have, the more faith. Let me use that word. The
Yeah,
more faith I have, which is something that I've been going through personally. So I just want to share this with you and the audience, and I want to get your opinion. The more faith I have, the quicker my manifestations appear. Is that
right.
what you feel too?
Yes,
Talk to me.
absolutely.
I want to know what you think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if we were to talk about this from the perspective of alchemy, alchemy has always been concerned with the raising of vibrations. I think it was something important that you just said, raising of vibrations.
Uh-huh.
And the aim of alchemy has always kind of been to kind of relieve humankind of pain and suffering, whether that be physical or spiritual, right? So
Yeah.
that's very, very important, and it requires kind of humility, doesn't it? Like the whole process, kind of like humility and kind of like a rejection of, like lower carnal energies, a rejection of, jealousy, covetousness, that kind of stuff. So,
Judgment. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, judgment is, non-judgment is important. And the other thing that's very important is letting go of your ego and what you think you know about the cosmos. And that's very, very important. That requires a level of humility that a lot of people just don't have, right? That's very, very important in the process. The other one is just being openness to experience, right? And you find that in a lot of individuals, right? But in a lot of them, you don't, right?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Let
yeah.
go.
So,
Let go. Let God. You know.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let go of what you think you know about the universe and the physical laws, and just go with the flow and trust in the process. Trust in the process is also important.
Yeah.
Trust in whatever process you're trying to manifest, right, or bring to fruition. So
Yeah.
in alchemy, it's, as we said, it's important to inject that primal, mental, psychic energy into the alembic so that we can get the result that we want. But it also has to be unadulterated energy in the fact that it has to be divested from doubt, right? And we can't doubt the process, right? We need to
Right.
really, really believe
We
in the
have to
process. And
believe. Yeah.
yes, yes, it has
And
to
the
be.
other thing I just want
Yeah,
to say is we have to let go of the outcome because a lot of times the outcome is better than what we had expected. And we
yes.
hold it up by holding that energy with you. Oh, I want it to be like this. And the universe is like, no, 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 no.
No, no, no.
We do it like this. You
Yes,
know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Which is
Yeah.
why when we have preconceived notions of how things are going to end up, we sometimes end up being disappointed, right?
I
Because
know.
right, we have this image of of what we were wanting to manifest, and then something else manifests, and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. So sometimes it's just good to be open to whatever comes, right?
Right,
So that's
right.
very important. And one thing that I usually liken this to is the process of, where we see this process accentuated is in our dreamscape. Sometimes I'm pretty sure you've had dreams like this where you're engaged in a specific activity, like maybe flying. Like I've had plenty of flying dreams before, and then all of a sudden, you're in the dreamscape and you're going, and you're flying, and you're like, wow, how am I doing this? I have like a 360-degree view of everything. Everyone's looking at me, and then all of a sudden you're plagued by this seed of doubt. It's like, how is it that I'm flying, right? And then the minute you have that thought, what happens? You drop to the ground, right?
Well,
You lose the ability to fly.
what's happened to me is not in dreams. It's happened to me jumping timelines, I think. Jumping from or maybe third dimension to fifth dimension where I'll be doing something and then I'll realize, wait a minute, I was over here. And
Mm,
I've experienced. Not so much in dreams, but being here,
mm,
or losing something and then finding it again. That kind
yes.
of thing, that's been kind of weird. I want to mention this is such a thorough book. I just want to say a lot of information in here, a lot of history in
Yeah.
this book. I mean, how long did it take you to put this together?
I like to be fully transparent. This is a book that wasn't written in a linear fashion. So, for instance, I started writing a lot of the chapters that are in this book in 2011 or 12 when I was doing my master's in Western esotericism with Exeter University. And
Yeah.
then it's kind of evolved from there. Like, I wrote a lot of the chapters during the pandemic because I had nothing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, no,
Right.
but
Right. Yeah.
it's really in depth. I want to
Yeah.
say you give a lot of information. You talk about Jesus, you talk a lot about Carl Jung, you talk
Yeah.
about the process of the mind. There is a part
Yes.
two. You talk about the black sun, a symbol of transformation.
Yes.
It shows up in many al alchemical, I don't know, I can't say this, manuscripts.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you just talk about, and that you also talk about the death of science versus, or just I feel like you're talking about spirituality and science finally
Yeah,
coming.
yeah. So, like, with that part, with the last part, like I talk about how viable metallic transformation is, like how viable that process actually is from a contemporary perspective. And then there's also the connection between alchemy, which is an ancient tradition, and modern science is very strong. And modern kind of developments and discoveries in science are kind of falling into alignment with alchemical law.
I know.
So, for instance, like if I were to say, I don't know, like in the greater circulation, which is the philosopher's stone, the alchemist has to inject, as I said, the primal mental energy into the process to facilitate that metallic transmutation. In quantum theory, right today, we know that the act of observing kind of a subatomic particle alters its trajectory along the space-time continuum. So there's an example of, mind over matter, right? Mind affecting matter on some level. Okay, so there's one expression of it. And, like there's other anomalous phenomena that kind of violate materialistic frames of reference too. And I talk about many of these in this specific book.
Mhm.
So, um, like let me think about an example. Um, for example, like I think I talk about the neurosurgeon Walter Penfield, right?
Mhm.
And his
Yes.
associate Herbert Jasper, who conducted like basically these innumerable experiments. So basically, he conducted like a procedure on more than like 500 patients who had intractable epilepsy, which kind of involved removing kind of the cortical scar tissue, which was causing seizures, right?
Okay.
So today, this technique is kind of called cortical stimulation mapping. It's used in neurosurgery and is kind of like the standard practice for guiding tumor resection. And it involves stimulating like areas of exposed cortex, right? Where the patient is awake so that they're not under anesthesia.
Oh
So what
wow.
he found out was that when he ran his electrode kind of over areas of the mesial temporal lobes, which are over here, right,
Mhm.
the patients reported this transient doubling of awareness, right, where one part of the self kind of remained anchored in the present moment, and another part kind of experienced like past life memories. I don't mean past life memories
No
as
way.
yeah,
It
like
tapped in. It
yeah,
tapped in.
yes, exactly. Many of which had been kind of, I guess, hitherto forgotten. So,
Right.
so the predicates for self as content, right, are encoded in the neural tissue. But where is the self as context, the part of yourself that can move backwards and forwards in time? That's not necessarily a part of the brain. It's not anywhere in the brain. So where is that?
That's
right?
in the soul, right? That's in the
Yes.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. So some of these, I talk about some of these things
Yeah.
in the book under the section on alchemy and science. Yeah.
Cool cover too, by the way.
Thank you very much. And you know the important thing about that, because someone asked me about the cover, they're like,
Yeah. What's up with the
what was
cover?
what was the idea behind the cover? And I'm like, well, you know, like think about the butterfly and what the butterfly actually means. I'm like, the butterfly is the ultimate symbol of transformation and
Oh,
transmutation,
that's true. That's
right?
true.
Because it starts off as a, you know, as a caterpillar and then like, you know, grows and then transforms and becomes this incredibly beautiful, ethereal, you know,
Yeah.
creature
Yeah.
called a butterfly with wings, which seems to be very disparate from what it was when it was a caterpillar. So that's a form of natural transformation and transmutation, right?
That's what
That's
we're
a
going through right now. And that's why you put it on this woman's body because
yes,
we are transforming. Yes?
yes, exactly. And it's
I
and
love
it's
it.
and it's the aesthetic feminine endeavor, alchemy. You know,
Yeah.
it's very inextricably connected with the feminine as
Mm.
well, and
I
change.
know. I found
Yeah,
that really interesting.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I talk about all of that in the book, and yeah, I really enjoyed writing this book. I'm very attached to it. I should say that.
Oh, okay.
It's a process that's very dear to me, and I feel very close to the process. I feel like, you know, it's inherently true. It's something that's woven into the humus of the universe, and that it's something that's veridical. It's a true process, and we all move through these alchemical stages of transformation through our lives multiple times on the physical level, and then also on the spiritual and psychological level as well.
Yeah. I just will ask you one quick question before we
Yeah.
get out of here today. How has this changed your life? How has putting this together changed your life?
Um, yeah, I mean, one way that it has changed my life is that I'm getting to do many, many more podcasts on it. So that's a
Me
right.
and
So
all of
that
us out there. All right.
yeah, totally. So I'm doing that, and it's also just an opportunity, I think, for me to share my passion about.
Yeah.
It combines my passion, my multiple passions that I have: history, psychology, medicine, all those things. It brings all of these things together as this place where I can kind of discuss all of them together, like, you know, as a coherent whole.
Yeah. Like
And
it's like bringing it all
bring it
together.
together. Yeah, exactly. So no other discipline affords that, I think. So that's why I
Oh,
really like this book, and that's how it's changed my life. It's enabled me to talk about my passions collectively to many people.
there you
And
go.
that's what brings me life and energy.
Well, yeah, and share your story. Well, you guys, it's called The Riddle of Alchemy. It's by Paul. I'm going to spell his last name. It's Kiritsis.
Mhm.
Kiritsis.
Kiritsis. Yeah, so the way that it's pronounced is Kiritsis, right? Kiritsis, yeah.
Kiritsis. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, Kiritsis,
It's
yeah.
just
Paul.
different. It's very different. But I love
Yeah.
the book. I love the cover. I love
Thank you
the
very much.
information. You guys got to check it out. If you want an angel reading, if you want a psychic reading, you can go to my website, nancyyearout.com. Pick up my book on angel communication and spiritual law. Everybody has a fabulous week out there. Pay attention to the signs, you guys, because the angels are with you. I wish everybody a fabulous week, and God bless.
Hold your head high, the world is coming. Watch the colors lift your soul. Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the